It's nice to see so many people here for our Agents of Truth panel. So we are going to start in a quite traditional fashion where I just ask all of my lovely panelists just to introduce themselves so we can get to know each other a little bit better, and then we're going to get into the meat of it and talk a little bit about just how the agency landscape operates, how it works, what happens, what doesn't, who does what. And then at the end, we're going to leave at least 15 minutes or potentially more for some Q&A. So if you've got any questions, anything comes to your brain as we're talking, just note it down, or maybe you're one of these people who can just remember things, and then we'll create time for it at the end, okay? So I guess I'll dive in first just to do a very quick explanation on why I'm here with the mic and getting to ask the questions today. So Olaf kindly invited me over. I have a Belfast accent because I'm based in Belfast. I run a talent development programme in the OEM Music Centre in Belfast, and quite often we would facilitate lots of panels like this where we bring agents who do lots of important work in the music industry, and we would ask them to explain what it is they do to try and help musicians in Northern Ireland understand how to get a really good, functional, healthy working relationship with an agent underway, because agents can be the big difference that emerging artists need. But I would imagine some of you know that, and that's why you're here today, so we'll try and get into it. Okay, Rob, I'm going to go right over to you now. Just bat it across and get you to introduce yourself, and mostly just for this part of the question, focus on your day-to-day, who you are, what the agency does, some of the artists you work with.
Hello, I'm Rob. I work at FMLY Agency, which is based in Brighton. I'm a senior agent on the live side and represent, I think it's about 18 to 19 different artists of all walks of life. That's from Cold War Kids to Lady Hawk to Honeyblood, who I recently started working with, Score, and a bunch of other artists. My day-to-day is developing them on the live circuits, building them tours, helping build their wider release schedules with labels and managers, and build their live shows.
Excellent. Great start. We'll unpack that. Amy?
Hello, I'm Amy. I work at Runway, so that's Matt Hanna and Steve Backman are the main agents there. I've got a small roster of about 7 acts, all super new stuff, grassroots. Do some co-agenting with Matt and Steve. My day-to-day is kind of similar. It's sort of, coming up with a live plot, pitching for supports, festivals, trying to position artists in the right spaces for who they are and what they want to do. That's pretty much me.
Excellent. Caitlin?
Hello, I'm Caitlin. I work at ATC Live in London. I book about 18 bands, ranging different genres, hip-hop, pop, folk, and some of them are Hamish Hawke and Iona Zajac in Scotland. Then OK Kaya, Dandy Warhols, Temples, kind of a mixed bag.
Excellent.
Yeah,
great.
Similar day-to-day tasks.
Lots of good, solid Scottish acts in there, as we like to see. Okay, second part of this question is just a little bit more for maybe anyone in the room who is not a musician and maybe sees future potential to be an agent themselves. I just want to try and give a little bit of colour to how you got into being an agent. Like, how did it start for you? Caitlin, I'll start with you on that one.
I started... Well, I've always worked in music jobs, so I think my first music job was working in a guitar shop for about 4 years as a teenager, and then moving into record shops and just sort of being around. I lived in Brighton, and I promoted shows and ran a little music publication. And through that, I think I realised that I really enjoyed the live events, because I used to put shows on through the magazine, and then decided I didn't want to be a promoter and I wanted to work in the agency side. And so then I contacted an agency where I started working, which was quite a pop agency. I did an internship and then moved to part-time assistant, full-time assistant, booker, agent, and then once I'd sort of started my roster, I moved it to ATC because that more aligned with the sort of tastes I had. But a lot of my sort of route into agenting was asking lots of questions and sort of seeking out any agents I could find and asking how they did it and what it involved, because I think there's a sort of perception that you should just go in knowing exactly what the job is, and it's actually really complicated, and I have to check myself to try and explain it as if I'm explaining it to someone that's never heard of these terms before. So one thing is if anyone wants to be an agent, then come and have a chat, because I'm happy to share any information about that.
Love it. A good healthy dose of tenacity from you. Just putting yourself in front of people and asking questions is top tip. Works for every facet of the industry, really, because nobody knows everything. It's just a cold hard fact. Amy, what about you? How's your journey into being an agent?
So I went to a music college called ACM in Guildford when I was 17, 18. I used to put on local shows at the Boiler Room, if anyone's heard of that venue. Yeah, great space, like team there are amazing. Used to book local bands. Knew I wanted to do something within the music business, but didn't really know what. My founder of Runway was a guest lecturer. This was on Zoom, so during COVID, and he did a guest lecture. I think it was just, explaining kind of similar to what we're doing about like what an agent is, and I was sort of listening to him on this Zoom, like locked away in my room, and I was like, oh, that's me, that's what I want to do. So I just emailed him afterwards and said, can I have another Zoom call with you where I can kind of have you to myself and just like ask more questions and just really interested in what you do. We had that call, I think we spoke for like 2 hours, just got on really well. There was like real synergy there. I then moved to uni, so I went to still go to Goldsmiths, and Matt emailed me saying, did you move to London? I said, yes. He was like, cool, I've founded an agency, like, let's go, I'll show you the ropes. So Matt took a massive chance on me, and I hadn't done it before, it's my first music job, and both Matt and Steve just have taught me the ropes over the past 18 months, and I started out scouting new music for them, but I feel like you can imagine when you're scouting all the time and you see these amazing bands, you don't really want to give them away to other agents. Sometimes you're like, no, I want to do this, I want to represent this, rather than like, I want to find you and then give you away. So Matt and Steve were really supportive in letting me build my own roster, and it's just recently like agenting on my own, but started off co-agenting with them and learned so much, and here I am doing some of my own stuff now.
Love it. There's a bit of a thread here. You put yourselves in front of the people who are doing it and let them know that you're keen to do it, and that's kind of one pathway in. Rob, what about you? What's your story?
I'm a failed musician. And when I realised I couldn't play live or sound good, I decided to do some TM work, put on my own shows. I did stage management for various festivals. And then I realised that I hated all of that. And what I actually loved was putting together live shows and tours. And the OCD side of me really just enjoyed routing well-placed tours throughout UK and Europe. So I decided to make my life really difficult and start my own agency 15 years ago. I was very lucky, and I landed myself with Idols, Dean Wob Happy, Harvey Corson, VC Pines, to name a few. And I did that for 6-7 years successfully with a team of 6 of us. I was then bought out by an American agency in LA who wanted to build their international arm. So I joined them. Half my time was spent in LA, the other half was in the UK, and I would help bring over the American artists over to here, and I would bring our UK European-based artists over to America. And then COVID hit and everything went tits up, and I needed to get out of a US agency and have my feet on the ground with a UK-based agency, and had a job offer from FMLY Agency, which is where my home is now. So it's been a journey.
Nice. So the jobs that you took before you jumped into the agency role with both feet, by the sound of it, helped you understand how agency land worked a little, or was there a lot of just figuring it out and getting it wrong? And
I got a lot wrong. Still do. Yeah. But that's the only way you learn. So sure. I kind of put myself into as many of these conferences as possible, built up my database, learned from the best. I had a lot of guidance from people like Steve Nichols at UTA, who has Bonobo, Quantic, Bia Badoobi, other friends in different agencies as well, who were very helpful to help me out, with how contracting works, how invoicing works, and, deeper than just kind of routing a tour.
Yeah. That's great to hear. I can only speak really for Northern Ireland because I'm part of that ecosystem over there, but there's a lot of support. if somebody's trying to do something, you tend to find a lot of people do help, in the early stages. If somebody's trying to establish or grow, there's a lot of good people that can help. So it's always good to reach out. If you're ever trying to do something, you don't know how to do it, just look who's doing it and ask them for their advice.
I think that's the misconception with agents as well. Is like, we don't hate each other. It's just a different name above our heads. We all support each other and offer advice and, tour supports to one another.
Yeah, exactly. And you get that in other kind of facets of the industry as well. I'm a proud member of the MMF. They're here and on the ground. And as an artist manager, I work with lots of other artist managers. And yeah, sometimes we're all pitching for a similar slot at something, but whoever wins it, we're delighted for them. There's competition, but there's also beautiful support in all of it. So yeah, that's how this industry functions, and I think it's really nice, and we protect that. Right, so let's try and get into the kind of architecture of agency and how agency deals work, right? So just a few kind of like questions on that. So artists are very, clear on the idea or the theory of signing with the label, signing with publishers, signing with management companies, for example. When an artist signs with an agent, do they sign something? What does that deal say? Let's try and unpack that. And again, it might be different for your different agencies, and obviously keep any of your commercial sensitive information to yourself. But yeah, just in broad generals, how does agency representation work? Does anybody want it?
Each agency varies.
Sure.
With all of my artists, there are no contracts. I'm very much, we don't just represent the artist represents us. So if the artist does something out of character or something that, we don't want to be representing, we should be able to walk away. And vice versa, if the artist isn't happy, they should be able to walk away. The artist never pays for an agent. Our fees always come out from the live fee. So there's no exchange of money. So whatever they're paid, we usually take 10% of that. So unless you're talking your levels of Sigrid, Bia Badoobie and whatnot, usually there isn't really contracts involved with those mid to lower tier artists.
Okay, good to know. How does it work for you guys?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think, there's nothing sort of binding, but I think it's always good to sort of set out, even if it's on paper, this is what we're about as Runway, and this is kind of, how we conduct ourselves and how we want, our artists to conduct themselves in in an acceptable way. And we wouldn't make anyone sign anything that's binding, but just sort of having this is what we do, this is what we're about, and yeah, that's kind of sometimes on paper.
All right. How about you guys?
We similarly, but we have a terms of agreement at ATC, so that just includes, this is the territory we're booking you in. I think that's one thing that's kind of worth noting, is that an agent won't necessarily always book you in Europe if they're based in Europe, or if they're UK if they're based in the UK. You tend to discuss that on agreement. So some of my artists, I have a deal where I book them in the rest of the world bar North America, but you'd normally have that conversation right at the start. I think one thing that's worth flagging is I think artists sometimes approach agents in the UK and ask you to be their UK agent because they've got other bookers in Europe, but most of the time, I can't speak for you guys, but we would usually not just book in the UK because it's a bit easier to have a full scope over an artist's plans. So if you're booking the UK and you've got somebody else that's working separately to you and then you're clashing plans, I think personally I'd rather be across Europe always, ideally other markets if it makes sense.
Yeah, and the UK is, it's an island, it's a tiny market. I think agents, I hate to, you have to talk about the money because the money is, what sustains the artist's career and also the agent's career and the agencies. And the money is not great in the UK, that's to put it bluntly.
Yeah, sure.
So there needs to be a wider market for an agent to kind of get in and develop the artist further.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, so 10% we said there, so it's kind of accepted industry standard, that it's the 10% that agents take. We'll talk about gross versus net just for a quick second. So it's 10% of gross usually. So if it's a £100 fee, the agent takes £10, the artist takes 90, regardless of how much it costs you to do that show. And that's really important that people just understand that from the outset, because there's various kind of like pressure points on both sides, because a lot of what we're going to talk about today is about the emerging artists. Like some of these issues get slightly easier, but new difficult issues emerge. higher up the chain you go. So let's talk about that for a second. Like, in exchange for the 10%, what does the agent do? Let's start the long list, okay?
I think one thing also is it's worth knowing that the 10% will cover, so it's 10% no matter what deductions there are. So I know you touched on that, but I think sometimes people don't realise that that includes withholding tax. So if you work in a country with a heavy tax deduction, that deduction will come off the fee for the artist, but we'll still take 10% of the greater fee. So sometimes if you're at a point in your career where you're getting these organic festival offers and they're quite high, if you can manage to do it on your own for the early stages, you're likely to save some money. Obviously, there's benefits to having an agent at a point, but it can be quite a deduction when you account for all the costs. But essentially what you're paying for, and it is worthy once you're at that point, is somebody that's working full-time, essentially just being your spokesperson to promoters in the UK and further. So we'll go to conferences throughout the year, like the IFF, and discuss all festival bookings earlier on, and then you might come to us and say, we've got an album out in this period, we want to tour. So then we take all of that on, present it to you or your manager, and they'll come back and say, we don't like this, we want to change this. And it just allows the artist the time to focus on writing and being an artist and not doing all the admin, because it is a lot of admin and a lot of work. So even in that sense, it's only really worth us doing when it gets to a certain point, because it's a full-time job and we want to make sure that we can deliver.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely say as well, like, I think in my experience, one of the things that artists seem to want more than anything is like supports. And I think having an agent that has relationships is a good thing, but pitching for supports itself could be like a full-time job. Like, there's so many tours and there's so many artists that want support tours, and it's just like, if you want to be sort of put up for, you know, everything you want to be put up for, like, sometimes without an agent, like, that would just take, you know, hours and hours and hours out of your day if you were trying to do it yourself.
Yeah, like the big artists, I think sometimes we get this with bands on our roster, like Nick Cave or like Radiohead, or people that we work with, to somebody to come and say, oh, like, we've seen this tour go up, can we be submitted for it? But from seeing the other agents we work with who are receiving those submissions, you might be one of 200, like, just within our agency, and then beyond that, there's every agency knows about it and they're getting 200 from their agencies. So there's obviously a point in putting yourself forward for those things, but I think understanding quite how broad it is, because it is a big job, like you said.
And communication's key with the agent as well. Like, we need to know everything that's going on. We don't just work in live. We need to know about your releases. I used to ask for a 6 to 12 months plan, but I think we're probably going to touch on this later. After COVID, I now ask for a 12 to 18 months plan. I'm booking spring 2024 dates already for small to mid-size artists, and that for me is crazy in advance. You know, already second pencil on dates in March 2024. So we're always trying to think ahead. You know, you might be enjoying the upcoming tour or promoting this tour that's happening, but we need to know what your plans are for next year. And, you know, festivals will be making their offers in the autumn period, winter period, but, you know, really festivals are booking all year round. They're making their lists from the start, like every month. So we want to be updating them with as much information as possible, and it falls down to the tour supports as well. If you want to be put forward for a tour support, we need to be going in with quite a strong pitch, so you stand out to the other agents team, the other artist, and also, a lot of the time you don't actually need an agent to get a tour support. It's about the communication with the other artist that's going out on tour. The amount of tour supports that I've lost out on because the headline artist, even ones of my own, has decided to go with a friend, or they've promised it to someone that they know. That happens more often than not. So it's about making that community within the live industry yourself as well, and getting to know those other artists, and, you know, just talking to them over Instagram or one of the other platforms.
I think that's huge. I think that might even be like the main way to get support, because the artists of mine that get a lot of support tours are the ones that are friends with everyone. They've collaborated with everyone. They've brought people onto their tracks. They're on other people's tracks, and they can pull in those favours all the time. And obviously we work really hard to get those, but it does really benefit an artist.
And that frees up our time to focus on, like, the bigger picture then, you know, the festivals, the headline dates, and, you know, the real career-changing stuff. So yeah, it's a team effort all around. Just because you get an agent doesn't mean you get all the tour supports and the festivals, and I think that's really important to remember.
Yeah. Good points. You don't just sit back, you keep pushing forward. You touched on 2 points, and I'm actually going to take, one of them is about making a good pitch, and I want to unpack that and what that actually means and what anyone needs to do in order to build towards being able to make a good pitch, right? But I'm going to get the pandemic out of the way first, because, you know, we've had enough of that. So let's just quickly touch on how the pandemic has changed how you function as an agent. Rob, you were saying that, you know, you would ask for shorter term plans pre-pandemic, but now you need the longer term plan. Just share a little bit of like how it's changed the industry, maybe how it's changed competition for slots within the industry. Was the fact that everyone was making lots of music in their bedrooms and then having no opportunity to gig it until the floodgates open. Is that a great thing for you or a terrible thing? Let's talk about that for a minute. Does anybody want to start? Yeah, we'll go with you, Rob.
Okay. I mean, excuse my French, but it's just shit. Like, it's been really difficult coming out the back of the pandemic, because you've had, last year was filled with cancellations and postponements. I think we all came into it with the misconception that, hey, we're going to bounce back, everyone's really hungry, we're going to be right back into the rooms. And for 3 months, it was beautiful. And then it all kind of went downhill, and there was cancellations and the postponements started happening. Moving into this year, then you've got the cost of living crisis, where we're now seeing tickets have to go up so high, which is, in my opinion, a massive danger zone. Probably like most of us in here, I was brought up with live music and I went to a lot of it as a kid. But we're now outpricing the new kids coming up that can't afford to go to these shows, and that's a real problem, because we need those ticket prices high to be able to pay the artists enough to get out on the road. So it's that this is still an issue that we're dealing with this year now. I mean, I have artists that would go out usually for anything from between £10 and £15 tickets. We're now looking at £18 to £25, which, you know, is crazy, but it's the only way we can get them out on the road. So that's something that we're dealing with. I look at it like the last bit of a toothpaste bottle. We're squeezing out the last bit now, and that's the rest of the bands. We have 3 years worth of bands that were built up that were due festival slots, album releases, and these are all still happening, things that should have been out last year, the year before that. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to... What are we now, 23? I think 2024, 2025, things should hopefully start to settle down, but it's still a lot of work kind of pulling ourselves out from that 3-year mess. Sure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, and I would also preface this by saying I wasn't an agent pre-pandemic. I didn't work in it, so I hold my hands up to the fact I may not be the best person to answer this question. But I think from what I've seen and conversations I've had, you know, it's with promoters taking on new stuff, they've got to be a lot more selective, because, you know, promoters lost a huge amount of money, and then there's the same amount of slots, but, you know, you've got to be more careful. And I think as an agent, that sort of, we get more pushback for new stuff that we're trying to build if there's, you know, if promoters have got to cover their own back, and understandably so. And I think it's just, I don't think there's anyone really that's been untouched by it.
Yeah, I think that timing is an important thing there, because we came out of the pandemic, and then at the time where it was perceived that things were back to normality, there were some periods that I think it was really obvious to us that it was a really tricky terrain, but maybe not to artists. And the one that springs to mind, major PTSD, is November 21, I think it was, where every band brought out an album. I think maybe it was just where it timed with when you got out of lockdown and when labels and like the vinyl delays. It just, for me, everything came out in November, and a lot of artists were really disheartened because there was an inundation of releases. There was so many tours happening at the same time. Like, you'd have in the same streets, like all different genres, like playing at the exact same time. Like, there was so many pencils, it's really impossible to book. So when it came to it, sales were quite bad for artists, especially smaller ones. And I know some artists just didn't really buy that it was a pandemic issue and thought it was to do with them, and felt disheartened enough to kind of stop playing. And I think that's kind of sad. And if there's any artists here that have had that experience, and I think it's something to be thinking about. But I'd say now it's kind of got to a point where releases are kind of spaced out again. I definitely get the impression that 24, 25 is going to feel more normal. But like, there's certain genres that are still struggling. I think there's been kind of some slow sales in the sort of folk world and things like that. I think people have wanted to go to gigs and jump around. I don't know if that's just my perception, but yeah, it's been really hard. I think it's worth noticing how hard it's been for artists as well, because I can't imagine putting myself out like that and then being met with such a small response.
I think it's kind of confusing as well. Like, you have people like Ticketmaster saying like sales are booming, they're the best they've ever been, and you're like, well, you've got like Ed Sheeran, Coldplay, Harry Styles, Dua Lipa and Lizzo out, so you've got 5 of the biggest artists going, so I understand where that statistic would come from, but the disparity is probably bigger than ever. And it's like, that's, you know, if you're a new artist or, you know, a mid-level artist, I can imagine seeing something like that is really disheartening. Like, wow, everyone's going out, but they're not coming to see me. And I think it was, like, what's that statistic? I don't know where it's from, but it's like the average person in the UK goes to 2 gigs a year. Like, that's mad. And it's like probably going to be one of those 5. And it's like, that's why they're like Ticketmaster, like, it's the best it's ever been. It's like, well, you've got the pool of artists that people are going to see. Like, if you're going to 2 gigs, are you going to go to see like something at the George Tavern if that's, you know, your pool is only 2 acts a year?
Yeah.
Like I said, it's shit, but agents are really good at one thing, and that is doom and gloom. There is a positive side to it. I mean, I call it the blip because I'm a Marvel geek, and it reminds me of that. But the blip that we had of those 3 years, that reset button is actually it can be used as a positive thing as well. There's loads of new means out there for new artists to kind of like shine and stand out from the crowd. You can now do live streaming online, and you hit up tons of fans around the world, something that was never really a normal thing to do. And I must stress, this is not to replace live music, it's to enhance live music. So I will not have the arguments of, oh, it's rubbish, it's not going to replace live. It's not meant to. It's meant to aid and enhance it and help you, the artist, connect with people around the world, especially those that can't afford to go to gigs, still might be too scared about going into busy rooms. So there's loads of new technology that's been formed because of the pandemic that I think we should be focused on as well. And it's a great time for a new artist to start thinking outside of the book and how you can get our attention as well as labels and managers and promoters and break through, because there's loads of space to break through now.
That's a great point. Yeah, the live streaming stuff, there's a whole explosion of accessibility there, which is amazing, and that has its place, whatever happens in the future. But I definitely have seen lots of live streams that's only wanted and compelled me to like buy a ticket to get in that room. Did anybody see Confidence Man, Glastonbury live broadcast?
Yeah, loved it.
Oh God. Jeez, like I'm now on my scheduled fourth time to see them since Glastonbury happened not even a full year ago. So like, because the stream I was in my front living room like losing my head, thinking this is the best thing I've ever seen. And I've gone and seen them live numerous times, and I've got tickets to see them again. And it's only ever paid back dividends. Like, they were as good as a live stream and better live. So yeah, that's a good point, because, you know, we're here to be truthful. It's on the title, but also honesty and context really important in all of that. And the context of like the difficulty that agents face and artists face is really, really important, because I think any artist who wants to work in a healthy, sustainable way in the music industry needs to have their eyes and ears open to what the pressure points are, okay? So you've obviously got your huge Ticketmaster lovies, okay? And I love all of them, no shade. I'm a big pop fan, and I'm delighted for them selling all those tickets. But you also then have the Lil Sims of the world who are bossing it, like have amazing achievements and accolades, and still they pull their tour because of costs. I'm sure at least a few of us have seen that. Now I think that tour's back on again, hallelujah. But like, that's the reality, because the price of everything has gone up around it. So actually, once you get your spreadsheets out, you look at it and you're like, well, actually, if I do this tour, I'm just going to lose money, even at that level. So there's various points to consider on that. Do you have something to say?
Just on the Little Sim stuff, like the best thing that she did was to be honest with the audience and say, this is why I'm cancelling the tour, because I can't afford to do it with the tickets that are currently being sold. The reason, I mean, last year for me, in 15 years of being an agent, last year was probably the worst year of my life, because every single tour that got cancelled or postponed affected the next 5 or so tours, because it was hitting consumer confidence. So I think, you know, if you're cancelling dates or if you're postponing dates, even if it is down to the fact that you have not sold enough tickets, it's just having an honest statement about that and being clear, like, hey, we're not doing this because we can't afford it because you haven't bought tickets. Because that honesty will just help to improve the consumer confidence, something that we're still trying to bring back after 3-4 years.
Yeah, I think we definitely see that, like, due to unforeseen circumstances a lot, and, like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I just think, like, in my opinion, a lot of the reasons why sales aren't where they were is because when we were in lockdown, people were still buying tickets, but they were just rescheduled, and like you say, like, people never believe they're going to happen, but if you continue to do that, like, when the shows can actually happen, then people are going to think, well, there's no point, and it's just, like, having, like, a inbox full of, like, new dates, it just gets a bit knackering, and I think, like, that was a big thing. So I think, you know, if people can stick with shows, even if sometimes, I don't think cancelling, if, like, financially it makes sense, I wouldn't say cancel it because you don't feel like the room's going to have enough of a vibe. Like, I don't think the answer is being at home and playing to no one. Like, sure. If it works, then do it. Like, you want to make that show, so there's 10 people in the room, but then you want 10 people to go to 10 friends and be like, this was the best show I saw this month.
Yeah, I think it's tough as well because it's really good to be honest in that sense because it starts to reflect on artists, I think, and there's a lot of backlash about people saying that artists are getting really prudish for putting their ticket prices up, but if you actually look at our costings that we get and send to an artist, like, most of the time it's us that are suggesting these ticket prices, not the band, and we're just doing it so that they can break even a lot of the time. And I think an important thing to have between an agent and an artist is complete transparency over these things, so sending a costings and explaining, like, this is where the money is going to, so you can see exactly what the leftover is, and it's very rarely that much, and then that's going to get split 80% between the artist and the promoter after costs. It's really, there's nothing in it, and we have to raise the ticket prices at the moment to keep up with costs, and one way to facilitate that, I think, is just making sure the experience is particularly good, and to justify it, I've said this before, but I think, like, venues like Brood and Ellen, yes, and those kinds of institutions that people really respect, you get a whole experience there, and you know that you're going to have a great time. It's really well thought out. You get a rep there that really cares about the artist. The sound system's good. So I think if you choose these good venues and have a well thought out billing with a good support act, then you can kind of justify the ticket price a bit more than just putting people into the same square room and hoping for the best.
And take care of the audience, because at the end of the day, they're going to be your biggest funder for the rest of your life if you're an artist. You know, make sure, don't just rock up with T-shirts on the merchandise. I mean, I've never walked into a venue and gone, oh, thank fuck, T-shirts, I really need new clothes. Like, ask your audience before you go out on tour, like, you know, what merchandise do you want to see, because they're buying it. So, you know, just because it looks great for you that you've got your name on a T-shirt, it might not appeal to your audience going out there. Twitter, Instagram, asks, and all these things exist for a reason. So, like, communicate with your audience, not just with your team, and ask them what they want to see, because, you know, if you start listening to them, they'll probably start buying your tickets and coming out to see you more.
Yeah, that's a great point about the merch, because as you make the great point that the tickets tend to just try and neutralise the cost of getting the tour out and safe and transported, and the personnel who have to run the tour paid. Then what's left over is usually quite nominal, and it's T-shirts and it's merchandise. And damn, I love a really good merch table. I really like to see good, quirky, thought-out items that please me as a fan. And it's remarkable, I think, how many artists just roll out the T-shirt, don't really think beyond that. There's a whole world out there, guys. Cups.
There's a tea towel movement going on. I'm really behind that. Yeah. I like that everyone's got, like, banned tea towels now.
Yeah.
Like, an artist of mine was selling tiles, like bathroom tiles, the other day.
What?
I bought 3.
Nice.
Oh my word. Yeah, like, let's do a separate panel on the possibilities of merch, but we won't have enough time today. But there's a whole world out there. Right, okay, so I'm going to get into the part that's the most kind of, motivating, because it's the stuff we can be doing. It's the things that make the difference when you're an artist who wants to work with an agent, okay? So you mentioned the point earlier, Rob, about making a good pitch, right? So let's go to the very start of that. How does an artist even pitch themselves to you, right? So just to explain what I'm hoping for in this answer is, like, where you're looking at to find your next favourite signing. What outlets, what are your source materials, what will get you out to go and see a band or an artist play live, and how much do the optics around it. And I'm going to say streaming numbers, other factors, just key metrics around it, how much that matters versus how you feel when you listen to the music.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a lot. if you're looking for an agent, that means that you're probably playing shows. So it's in the name. Use the promoter. Get the promoter to promote you to the agent, because that person is going to be working with a ton of different agents out there, small, big, doesn't matter who they are. So ask the promoter to start recommending. You know, if they're a big fan of you, get them to recommend the band to agents that they're speaking with, and to even invite them down to the show. Same as a venue booker as well. Doesn't necessarily have to be a standalone promoter at Live Nation, DHP, AEG, or SJM, or anyone. It can be independent. It can be the venue themselves. So have a conversation with them. If you're going to hit out and cold email an agent, email etiquette is a big one. My pet hate is getting an email with tons of attachments and 4 or 5 pages, like, where do you think we have the time to read this? Because it just doesn't exist. So really think about what you're doing if you're emailing. I just love it. Hey, we're looking for an agent. So-and-so recommended you. Here's a link to the music. Great. Let the music do the fucking talking. Because then if we want to find out more, we're going to ask you. And what you want is for us to respond to the email. So use the promoter. Keep the emails short if you're cold emailing. And then with I love data. I think data is great, but I don't care if you've got 200 streams or 200,000 or whatever. If the music speaks volumes to me, and that's the same for a live show. If I come along to a live show, I don't care if you're playing in front of 5 people or 5,000 people. If it's a good live show, then I'm going to want to work with it. And I also enjoy seeing something go wrong on stage, like a string snap or a strap of the guitar break. I like to see how the musicians deal with that incident. Do they carry on? Do they walk off on stage in a strop? Or, you know, because that speaks volumes then of that musician and the band and how they handle all kinds of situations thrown at them. One thing I always ask for is data as well, in terms of, you know, where people are listening to you. Again, it doesn't matter how many, but where are they in the UK? Where are they in Europe? What are your social stats saying in terms of, you know, the age groups and where are all these people situated? Yeah, it's kind of a broad range of stuff.
That's good. And where would you say artists are getting that data from mostly? Spotify for artists, a big source?
I mean, it's everywhere. You've got Apple Music, give you great rundowns. Spotify for artists. Meta, Facebook, whatever they're calling it, is got loads of information there that you can jump on. And also building a mailing list early if you're a new band, because that is direct access to fans that you have, especially when you're selling tickets. You have 600 people on your mailing list and 400 of them are from your home city, and you're playing a 150 cap venue, you're probably going to sell that out yourself. So all of these things are, you know, things that I look for and ask for.
Excellent. What about you?
I think it's like kind of a case of making a bit of noise on your own. I think if you can get a bit of momentum and get people talking about your music or your live show, then that does a lot of talking itself. Like I was saying to Andy over here earlier, like I'm on like 6 shows a week at the moment. Like I will probably see it if you're playing in London and people are talking about you and it's hot. Like if you're on like a 4-band bill, I will see at least 2 of the bands probably. I'm knackered, by the way, but like yeah, it's like a new record for me right now. But I know that's easier said than done to be like make a bit of noise, be a hot band, but just be good, get a bit of like momentum, you know, like be really tight on stage. Like it is still a game of like if you're a good band, people are going to talk about you. And like being at that many shows, you meet other people who are at that many shows, and then you just swap tips as a music fan, in the same way that like whether you work in music or not, if someone tells you like, wow, this band was great, like you may not have an intention of necessarily working with them, but then they're on your radar, and like once 3 people have told you that in a week, then you're going to go check them out eventually. And I think just get a bit of momentum yourself, and I think that kind of can ignite something in whether it be a manager, an agent, or a promoter to be like, okay, like this could have legs, and this like looks like I could be part of something, and I could, you know, it's not necessarily going to be pushing a boulder up a hill. It's like, you know, this is hot. Is what I would say.
It's difficult for the agent as well, because we need to get in at the right time, because if I'm like talking to an artist I'm kind of hot on, I'm a bit like, we're flirting a little bit, and then I'm like, well, let's wait, it's a bit early, and all of a sudden along comes Caitlin, she's like, yeah, I'm really interested. I'm like, fuck, right, no, I'm back, like back in the room. So we've got to also like hit at the right time.
Yeah, there's
as well.
egos involved in agencies. I think like there's this sort of thing that you see yourself doing after a while where people are talking about it enough within the office or within the industry, and then your ears perk up and you're like, why am I not involved in this? But on the topic of email etiquette, I would say one pet peeve of mine is sometimes an artist, and you'll be doing it unknowingly because not all agencies communicate in the way that we do, but we all work in an office together, we all talk all day. Sometimes an artist will send a copy and paste email to every agent and they'll just change our name. Sometimes they'll forget to change the name. And then everyone's gone, oh, have you heard this? And then you don't feel special, and you want to feel special, and you want someone to have looked through your roster and decided that they're a fit. And you see it as well, sometimes an artist in a completely different genre, like my roster's quite mixed, so it never really perks my ears, but some of my colleagues just will book like a folk roster and then get like a grime artist that sends them like a cold mail, and I just think you have to think about it if you're going to go direct to an agent. And I think another way to avoid that is some companies will have A&R people. We have an A&R person, he kind of works with Rough Trade and with us, and he'll bring us about 10 artists a week, and we'll all sit and listen. And they can be from an artist that has 10 listeners to the track on SoundCloud to something that's on TikTok that's got millions of listeners. Like, if it's good, I think that's kind of the theme. And sometimes, I think one of the agents in the meetings recently in our company said that it takes their interest more if they see that 5 people they work with, like respected promoters and managers, follows a band than a million people from TikTok, because you can sign something sometimes, and I've done it, where the streaming numbers are huge and you put it in the wrong space because you think it's at a certain level, and then you sell 50 tickets in London. And sometimes I've got an artist that has about 100 listeners a month on Spotify and can sell out Village Underground, so it really is mixed, I think. But yeah, I think paying attention to people's rosters, making sure you know who you're contacting, look at artists that you like, see where they're sat, and then also, sometimes I'll work on things or be alerted to things from the team that I work on. So a manager that I get on well with might have an artist and then send me one of their other artists, and that makes me want to work with them. I think easy teams are quite a big thing.
Just like on that's like vital, is research. We're glorified salespeople. Salespeople are easy to find information on. Do research on the agent and the agency. Know who you're emailing and the roster that we represent.
There's a website called Roster. Do you use it? Roster, ROSTR without the E. And I think it's worth everybody getting on that if you don't have it, because it's basically like Wikipedia for our industry, and my roster will be updated without me even realising. Like, within a week of me putting the mail out, it would just be an agent, like everyone they work with, the stats of their roster, the genres they work on, then you can click on the manager, and then you can see the manager's whole roster, and then there's just so much information.
I really want to know
useful.
who it is that's updating them. Like,
I know. Well, so actually, one of our office in America, the ATC LA office, are involved in it.
Okay.
But I'll find that out.
Thank you. I owe them a
very on it.
whoever they are. Yeah. It's very helpful.
Yeah, so like we've touched on the spray and pray method. It does not work, okay? Don't just send it out to as many people hoping that something will stick. I've never seen or heard anyone where that's actually turned over workable long-term results.
But it goes back to that earlier point as well, as the community of the live music scene. I recently started working with Honeyblood, and the only reason why that happened was because one of my current artists who I represent put us both in touch with each other because they were friends, and that was because there was just communication going on between the artists, and artists were asking other artists who they recommend in the agent world.
Yeah,
I think like recommendation is always the best route if you can get to that. So if you can have a promoter, like I think I had a conversation with an artist in Canada recently, and it was too early for them to have an agent, but I suggested going to all of these grassroots promoters around the UK, just play lots of shows if you could get over here on the funding, and then speak to those promoters, make sure they're at the show, and then sometimes like Nathan at Brudenell will contact one of the agents at our company and say, like, you've got to get on this is going to be really hot. And then you have Yard Act and bands like that. So, and Yard Act came from a tip from a promoter, from a grassroots promoter, and are now where they are. So I think it's really important to make sure that people know you and that they're going to be in your corner, because we respect it and we trust our contacts that we work with.
Yeah, it's a great point, and a really important point for any artists who are trying to break out of the regions. You tend to create fires in your own regions before then you move and potentially start regular gigging in hotspots like London. Obviously, I'm based in
based in Belfast, so like, you know, the promoters in Northern Ireland, I always encourage every artist to get to know who they are. If they're not talking about you, you kind of need to change that before you're going to find major breakthroughs outside of your own kind of like area. And that's the same, it applies for Edinburgh, for Glasgow. If you're hotting up in your own city and your promoters in your own city are getting excited because people are buying tickets and leaving their house to come and see you, it's going to happen. We have a really nice case of that at the moment in Northern Ireland with a band called Problem Patterns. The live promoters in Northern Ireland love them because where they play, people come and see them, and they're now doing big support tours and whatnot, but it grew out of their hometown. So, you know, you will get exceptions to that rule, but I tend to find that that holds true in a lot of the cases. And then money's another one, and you've talked about funding there. Like, I just want to touch on that as well, because again, you know, if you're coming from Glasgow, Edinburgh, or anywhere further afield, trying to afford to get the wheels under you to get to major hot points to bring your show can be difficult, but there is funding available out there. Help Musicians, PRS Foundation are just two, but obviously Creative Scotland have some networks here as well. So there is ways and means if you're kind of on a head of steam to try and keep the wheels moving. Let's go back though on a pitch, right? Because, you know, you're playing gigs, things are going well in your local town, everyone's kind of like hyping up and liking what you're about. Touring tends to be a promotional activity around a release, historically, typically. So like in terms of like agents and the work, you were saying earlier, Rob, I think about like you've got a mid to early stage artist who's booked out for what, a year from now or close? Okay, so an artist has recorded the best work to date. It's happened in the studio, it's off being mixed. What kind of happens then in terms of timeline? How early does the agent want in? And what do you start thinking about, like in terms of plot planning? When you start looking at your data points and go, okay, you've got listeners in Brighton and Glasgow, but we need to make a tour out of this. Like, how does that all work? And who are the people around the table usually? Do you work with artists who are just themselves, or do you tend to find that there's management?
I think there isn't like... It's not just one way and that's it. It really varies on the artist, the team, where they are. I mean, I work with an artist that I still haven't seen live or heard any music, which is crazy, but I know. Saying that out loud now in a room full of people, I feel really stupid.
What did they say?
But I trust the team, the label, the management, and I have heard some demos, and it's quite an exciting project. But there's a lot of work to be done there. On that side, this really taken a punt on the manager that I've known for a while here, but I've got a good feeling about it, and it's very slow steps there. We're putting them out under a different name to do warm-up shows coming up in the next few months and building up from there.
Intrigued.
And then I have, but then there's other artists that I work with, Pyra, who's from Asia, and she has no management team, and she's built this whole press, radio, marketing team around her with this whole album campaign that will take her now for the next 18 months, 16 to 18 months worth of releases to come out. And in that, it's again, it all comes down to communication. I'm starting to side rail now, but yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the artist when it comes to self-management, because I think that's a good thing to look at, which I didn't used to. Started working with an artist called Cartoons this year, who's sort of like a producer, hip-hoppy, jazzy production sort of project. And he's amazing, and I just really wanted to be involved in it. And when he said he doesn't have a manager, I was a bit apprehensive, but then I found out he used to have a social media job, so he's just insane at social media marketing. Like, that's completely covered. He's really on it, and he's just like, I can do this job better than a manager could for me at this stage, and I'm going to save myself 20%. So that's a green flag. But sometimes you'll work with something where it's so early, and maybe the artist hasn't been in the industry for very long, so they don't understand how much demand they take up, I guess. Because if you've got 15 bands and you're working all week round, everybody's on cycle, like, you need to understand that if you don't have music out at the minute, there's nothing kind of ticking along, then you might need to go back to the drawing board and do some writing and kind of come to us when you've got something that we can work with, rather than kind of treating us like a manager, because I think that can happen where you're getting calls at midnight and the kind of things that managers get, which I respect them for, but it's not something I love. So yeah, I think it's artist to artist with that.
Yeah, it's definitely an artist to artist case. Like I have a pretty much even split actually on my roster of managed and unmanaged. Like I do stuff with like major management like Hall or Nothing or Red Light, but I also do unmanaged stuff, and it's like it is a case of like I've been doing my washing and I'm like, this is one of my band's jumpers that I'm literally about to do the washing of. Like it has got to that point sometimes, and I think being mindful of my capacity now is something I've definitely learned over time. But other than doing their washing, those bands are like super self-sufficient, like, you know, like to the point of like mixing and mastering everything themselves. Like the technical ability there is incredible, and like they just like have put a shift in. A band called Libra who are just like absolutely incredible, and yeah, they're such a good band and so on it, and have been doing it for a while. And also a new actor of mine called Baby Morocco is just like a genius at like promoting himself. If you have time afterwards, if you Google his real name, Clayton Patet, that's quite a raunchy little like list of articles that will come up, but he knows how to promote himself. I'm probably not like appropriate to say on camera what that's for, but if you're intrigued, give it a go, because I've never met anyone that knows how to plug himself like that.
Love it.
You do need to, I think, sometimes.
For
like
sure.
I've got some artists that are a bit cool for school when it comes to social media, and I'm always pissing them off, being like, come on, post a talk. You see it directly in sales, like week to week, we look at sales every Tuesday, and the artists that are really like shamelessly proactive on social media and share the tour poster every day, or reshare when the promoters shared it, like the gig tile, like doing that stuff has a direct effect on sales. And I think that kind of really coy, like low-key social media presence is good at a point, and you can do it if you're like the smile and you can sort of breadcrumb and get people really excited. But if you're early on, just like don't feel embarrassed, just go for it, because you're gonna
like chip off your shoulder about TikTok. Just
get on TikTok, do the little dances.
It's important because like it's like you have to. If we book you a show, let alone a tour, just share the fucking poster. Like announce that you're playing a tour, because there are so many artists that think they're too cool out there to go, right, I'm going to do it. Like our job is not to sell you tickets. We do not do that. We will build your live career. We will connect you with the right promoters. We will find the right festivals and build you up in the right festivals. And a good agent will know when to say no as well to offers that come through. But you know, at the end of the day, I mean, even down to the promoter will only provide the tools. It comes down to the artists themselves to help move these tickets.
Yeah, I think that's the perception. Is just like, well, we pay the promoter to promote the show, but you've got your audience there in your hand. Like they're looking at your posts. Like promoters can sort of target, but they've got so many shows going up, they might have multiple posts a day. Like it's going to get lost unless you get on board.
And going back to that, like 10%, £150 a show, £15 to the agency. You can imagine how much the promoter themselves get paid then. Less than that, if anything. Usually it will end in a negative for them. So it really does come down to the artists. Like we want to see like active artists out there. It doesn't matter how small you are or how big you are, just keep pushing it, and we'll help you come up with marketing plans and ideas, as will the rest of the team. But it is really about kind of putting all heads together and not just sitting back going, I've got an agent now, I'm going to shift all these tickets easy.
Yeah, it's those teams that do the best, I think, the ones where you kind of have a round table with like the label and the press people and the manager, and like everyone's on board. Like the projects that I work on where I speak to those people every week are the ones that do the best by far. Like the ones that check in every 3 months and ask us for an update. It just doesn't work in the same way, because you kind of want them to be saying, oh, we've just got this article that's come out in this publication, and then we'll go and send it to the promoter, and it moves quicker. Like we are really busy. Like it does just get lost if you're not in touch.
I had an artist come around a couple of months back, and they were like, "Oh, well, that wasn't a sold out show. That's not very good, is it?" And I was like, "No, it's not very good." I was like, "You should be worried because the promoter isn't happy, and like, you know, we threw everything at this." And then you go back and you go through the socials, and I'm not saying it all comes down to socials. It's about being clever about it. But you know, and then you see well, the artist, you know, didn't even do a grid post or didn't share across stories, didn't really support the rest of the teams working around it. It's the artist might be disappointed, but you know, we feel it as well, and the promoter feels it, and everyone else that's been involved up to that point.
Yeah, that's incredible context and really important. Everyone at every stage on this is trying to build connection, and social media is one available resource to do that. Of course, there are others. Whatever your chosen method is, you can't avoid the step of creating connection. And dear love music and all the wonderful songs that you've probably already written in this room, but I think a lot of people just pile so much pressure on the shoulders of the music, like it's just going to do everything. Like, just write the song and everything else will just happen. It's just, come on.
Yeah, no, and we only get paid when you get paid. I think that's also worth remembering, is that sometimes I think artists feel like we're against them if something's not going to plan, but really all we want to do is get together again and think about what to do next, because we get 10% when you get paid, and when those fees go up, we're making more money. So in a shallow way, that is important.
Yeah. And none of us are here for the money. Like, there isn't, none of us make much money. Let's just get that out of the way now. We love the artists we work with, and I think I can speak on behalf of everyone here. I mean, my roster is my extended family, and I would do anything for any of them to get them where they need to be. But that does take a huge team effort. You know.
Amen on that. Right, my time says we've 5 minutes, okay? So if anyone has any questions or they just want to share anything, see one hand at the back. We've got a little roving mic.
Hello. I actually know all three of you, which is lovely. I work for Music Venue Trust, but I'm going to ask you a question as a manager. It feels like the landscape has changed quite a lot in terms of support acts for tours. It used to be that, you know, the headliner or the headline tour was announced and there was an opportunity to pitch a support slot. And now I feel like tours are being put out with the whole package. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice on how to pitch an artist to support on a tour with an artist that you have, for instance.
I tend to do it as we go. It depends on how soon the tour's going up. I think if you've got a few months to go, at the minute, my general rule of thumb is see how the first week of sales go. Might give you an idea of what you need. So then if it's moving slowly, then we might look at locals, and if not, then we'll look at a tour support early on. But I think when we look at it early on, sometimes it might be that the label has a tip, or I think most times the artist already has an idea before you've even confirmed the tour of who they'd want, and I guess that comes from either people they've collaborated with or that have taken them out. But I think a good way of doing it is to befriend agents and just, I don't know, I think like Alex, our CEO, is kind of friends with every agent at every company, and I think that they really respect him because he's so nice, and we'll say, oh, like, your artist could be really good for this tour, and there's no competition involved, so just being in touch.
For sure. Like, don't be afraid to make it like a team effort. I feel like there's a lot of pressure to deliver, and you want it to be like, I brought this to the table and like I did this all myself, I'm so good at my job, which I totally get as well. But like, if they're label buddies, like, ask the label to help as well. If they know each other personally, if you know the manager, like, there's absolutely no shame in using all available connections and resources to get it over the finish line. Like, it is a team, and I've been guilty of that as well. Like, I've definitely wanted to be the one, like, I've delivered here and I'm so great, I'm the right choice to be the agent for this band. Like, there's definitely an ego thing to do with it, but at the end of the day, like, if it's grassroots stuff, we're all about like building that career rather than like showing off.
I think actually one good way of doing that is we do it within the agency, but I'm sure that we would all be open to it if it came externally, is to say, I've got an artist, I really want a support tour for them in November, can you help me out? And I know you, if you messaged me like that and said it's within this genre, if I didn't have something for it, I might say, oh, Tony needs this support tour in this period, and then before we've even had those conversations, we've got that in our head, and you'd want to do somebody a favour. So I just think the fact that you know so many people in the industry will help with that, and just going out for it before you've even heard of any tours happening is useful.
I'd also just cover all bases. Like, going to regret saying this, but bypass the agent. Go to the manager, go to the label, go to the promoter, hit everyone up, because the agent and the agency, I would say 6, 7 out of 10 times, is also going to be pushing a lot of artists from their own agency to try and get that tour support. Like, that does happen, and I'm guilty of it a lot of the time. We still put all the acts on a list that comes through, especially ones that we email out to asking for submissions, but you can be damn sure the top 3 artists on there are probably on my roster or on the agency somewhere. So it's always handy to like go to the promoter of each of the shows, go to the manager, and they'll probably just circle you back to the agent, but then at least the name is around a bunch of other people, because what might happen is they might go, well, actually, we can't do this tour with you, but I have another artist out that this would be really good for. And those communications might open up there to other doors.
Literally 1 minute left.
So, all right, we'll keep it quick. Do you guys want to be my agency friends?
Yeah.
For someone like me, I'm thinking about when I bring a pitch forward to someone like you guys, in what format are you wanting that in? Because obviously you kind of want to serve the best tray of hors d'oeuvres, so I'm wondering what the sort of plate palette should be looking like.
I think play it safe, I think maybe is the rule of thumb, because I'm a bit of an over typer and I can send paragraphs off, but some people just read that and go, oh, like, I don't want to read all this text. I think just straight links, and also I think it could sound a bit desperate without meaning to sound horrible, but sometimes when people are saying, I think the language is important. Sometimes people will say, I really want an agent because I really want to progress my career, and they'll make it about them, and instantly that turns me off, because we're a business, we need to make money. So I think saying like, this is what I'm going to do for you, I've got this, I've got that, and give them the facts, give them interesting points, and keep it concise, and that's what I'd say.
This sounds really mean, but I don't care that you played guitar when you were 5. Like, don't tell us about all of that. Just deliver some music. This is my next live show coming up. I see you're based here. The nearest show I have to you is then. Can you come along to it? Let me know if you want any more information. Then if we hit you back and go, I'd love more information, then fucking slap it all down, you know, because we've asked for it.
When you've got a show, I think is a good one, like saying I'm playing in London tomorrow and we're all in London. And I think a good thing is also like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or like the midweek days are really good for getting agents down, because everyone's at work and that's when we go to shows. Shows at weekends I tend to avoid for London because industry don't really go to them. It's more just friends and fans. So I think that's it.
Top tips. We got to wrap it up here, guys. Can I get you all to join me in a round of applause for our amazing agent?